Sri Vasudevanand Saraswati, Chapter 5. Annapurna, his wife. Annapurna, the wife of Vasudev, was the very image of an ideal Arya housewife. She had effaced her personality and merged into that of her husband. She was indeed a striking feminine ideal of self abnegation. She shared with him patiently all the trials and tribulations of life. A woman of piety, devotion, and faith, she braved all the situations in life with her husband without a breath of despair and murmur. Though Vasudev had yielded to the persuasions of his elders and relations in acceptance of the grihasthrama, that is, the married life, his heart was else away in the Supreme or God. He who was born to lead allowed himself to be chained by the shackles of worldly life through marriage, only to educate the world in the ways of divine life amidst the earthly existence and nothing more. Annapurna was a great asset to him in this mission. She never proved to him an obstacle on his spiritual path as a woman is commonly supposed to be. She knew the worth of her husband and her Lord. She learned from him many a thing about the Puranas and the Shastras and was well informed. Those religious and spiritual talks from the mouth of her husband and her Guru enhanced the beauty of her character and religiosity of her heart. She never wished to be separated from him, even for a day, with the view to be helpful to him and to serve him after the manner of a pativrata or an ideally obedient wife whose sole aim in life was assured to be the service of God through the service of her husband as Patidev. It is difficult to grasp and appreciate the meaning of this self abnegation on the part of a woman for her husband in the present age, where marriages can be treated as mere acts of a short lived drama. Vasudev, also, who had the divine power of prevision of the future, granted her wishes to be always by his side, and whenever he planned trips to holy places, he would not mind being escorted by her. She followed him like a shadow and accepted everything in all the situations that came their way in fair weather and foul. Just like her ancient counterparts in Sita and Savitri, Ansuya and Damayanti. Vasudev appreciated her spiritual qualities and tenderly nourished them, believing at heart that she was a woman of pure gold born to be burnished and brightened in the fire of tapas in his company. She was in his eyes a Brahmavadini as Maitreyi was to the sage Yajnavalkya. It has been said that Vasudev too, like his father Ganesh Bhatt, was away from home soon after his marriage and stayed at Narsanvadi, the sacred place hallowed by the memory of Narsimha Saraswati, an avatar of Lord Dattatreya. Vasudev busied himself there with practicing tapasya or the ascetic discipline to attain to self-realization and union with his Ishtadev, that is, Dattatreya. But the Lord, who guided the destinies of his father, again commanded him from within his heart in a mystic state to return home and carry to completion his worldly role in the company of his holy wife Annapurna. The Lord further assured him of his constant presence with him in Managaon, his native town. While Vasudev was returning to Managaon, wondering how he could realize the presence of Dattatreya near him, a miracle happened on the way. A goldsmith saw him at Kagal, a town on the way, and presented to him a beautifully molded golden image of Dattatreya without worrying about the cost. Vasudev took it home. He built a small shrine for it under the guidance again of the Lord Dattatreya himself, who promised to be with him. Vasudev, who thus returned to Managaon, continued to stay in the new shrine instead of staying at home. His stay went on undisturbed for some days. One day, Annapurna came to see him there. He was closeted in a room and was in deep meditation. When he came back to himself and opened the door of the apartment, he saw Annapurna seated near the door and merged in a mystic trance herself, and not aware of his being near her at all. After a few minutes of prolonged meditation, she was aware of his presence and reported to him that she had quite an unusual experience of some deep, unspeakable calmness within, and that she had a vision of Lord Dattatreya with a halo of mystic light around the figure. Vasudev grasped the meaning of the experience narrated by her and realized how the Lord had testified to her spiritual status and proved through her the veracity of his promise to be near him in Managaon. Time passed on and Annapurna delivered a son to Vasudev. But the child was too short lived even to get its birth applauded by the relatives. Vasudev, who by now had taken long strides on the path of his ascetic course and detachment to the worldly experiences of joys and sorrows, was calm himself and was sure that Annapurna, also whom God had blessed with that uncommon experience of mystic realization only a few months ago, would stand the event with calm resignation of his will. And indeed, she did so. Vasudev was sure that the earthly link was snapped in the taking away of his child by the Lord who was leading his steps to his goal in life. And now the Lord was to take soon, within a year or so, the final step of his total severance from the common run of domesticity and of bringing Vasudev out into the larger arena of his future mission. Annapurna soon took ill and had high fever. During this illness, they were both staying at Gangakhed, a town away from Savantwadi. The fever was rising and there was no signs of its abating. It was going to be fatal. Annapurna knew it and asked her husband to be near her. Tenderly, she spoke to him, apologizing for her omissions and commissions in life, praying to her God, who was her husband. Vasudev was touched by these words and assured her that she was an ideal wife, a woman of chastity, and would be accepted by God in his bosom. She was sure to meet him whence there is no return to this mortal world. She was going to be Mukta. On hearing these words of consolation and cheer from her husband, in whose spiritual powers she had great faith, the noble soul serenely took leave of her earthly tenement. The last link of Vasudev to the worldly life was thus snapped by the Lord. Annapurna was indeed a woman true to the spirit of her name, which also reminds us of Parvati, the divine spouse of Shankar, who has been extolled by Adi Shankaracharya in his famous Sanskrit prayer in the verse, O Annapurna, possessed of eternal prosperity, O thou, dear spouse of Shiva, O Parvati, feed me with alms that will nourish my mind and soul. Jai Thembe Swami.